Hello everyone, and today we're back into another top 5, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 worst tech Loomians that I have used. Now, this includes only the tech Loomians that I have used, so if there's a tech Loomian that I have not used yet, it won't be on the list because it will be unfairly critiqued, so it will only count Loomians that I use. Let's head right onto the list. Number 5 onto this list is actually going to be Melee Revenine. Melee Revenine honestly isn't even that bad. The problem is that it does have a higher ranged attack than it does melee attack. But there is a couple of perks that Melee Revenine has, at least compared to the other numbers on this list. The thing is with Melee Revenine, it's good as a surprise Loomian. It could two-shot Venolin after a Vengeance boost, which is pretty nice. The fact that Melee Revenine does have that element of surprise is pretty nice. The problem is, outside of that element of surprise, it doesn't do the greatest. And plus, once the element of surprise has been shown, the opponent will not make that mistake for the rest of the battle. They know it's a Melee Revenine the rest of the way, meaning that it struggles for the rest of the battle. Melee Revenine is solid, and it can definitely do the job well, but it doesn't perform as well as the range version. And that's honestly the problem here. It's alright, but it gets outclassed by the range version, and there's kind of no reason to run the melee one when the range version exists. But despite that, this is one of the few techs which are actually okay to use, but it's not the greatest, and that's why it's number 5 onto the list. Number 4 onto this list is actually going to be Dorgo, but this is the Egg Lob Dorgo. I'm really sad that I have to put this on the list, but it just never did the greatest for me. The thing is with Egg Lob Dorgo is that it sounds like a really good idea, and the idea is still insanely good. You Egg Lob to do extra damage, you swap out into something, they go into their plant type when you're on Luminami, and then you do a ton of damage. The idea is certainly there. It definitely is an insane idea. The problem is that Dorgo doesn't have a high-ranged attack. The reason why Radiant, Forecast, and Valkyrie works is because Valkyrie has a 125 range attack, and also Awakening that increases its stab. The problem with Dorgo is that it has 81 ranged attack, so it doesn't really hit that hard, even for Loomians that are super effective. Like later on this list, a Colossotrops lives a Egg Lob, and keep in mind, Colossotrop has weak range defense, so that is really unfortunate. Also, Range Dorgo just doesn't tend to do as much damage as the melee version, because the melee version can have abilities to take like Ace, or Awakening, or Boast, which just makes it perform better than the range version. Number 3 onto this list is actually going to be Valkyrie, the Melee Valkyrie. Just like with Melee Revenine, Melee Valkyrie is just not that good, but it's even worse than the Melee Revenine, and the reason is why is because there are so many good Valkyrie sets in our range. You can run the Magnify Valkyrie set, you can run the Boots Valkyrie set, you can run the Defensive Pivot set, just like I said in the Revenine segment, and the last one is the Melee set, and unfortunately the Melee one is the worst of them all, because you don't have a light melee move yet. Valkyrie doesn't get a light melee move. No light dash, no blind spot batter, no dazzling barrage, none of that. It doesn't have a melee light type move yet, which definitely makes it struggle. Mainly against water types. Water types are the biggest problem with it. And while it does have some nice moves like Nosedive and Holy Slash, those are its only good melee attacking moves that it has. And it really struggles with the rest of the meta, considering that there are so many water types in the game right now. And the thing is with Valkyrie is that it could work, Melee Valkyrie could work, but it just sucks. It doesn't tend to do the job that well. You need to get a couple of power focuses in order for you to even hit hard. That's why Valkyrie's in the top 3. There is no reason to run it at all. Number 2 onto the list is actually going to be rather sad, because it's going to be Salvage Munchwheel. And Salvage Munchwheel might be one of the worst abilities for a Loomian ever. If you don't hold an item, you take the consume item from your opposing teammate. So this ability is exclusive for doubles, but hey, it's not the worst. I mean, the cattle ability for Hoganosh works pretty well in 2v2s. So how does salvage work? Not great at all, because Munch Wheel holds no item at all. The difference is with cattle is that there's a lot of different combinations you can have. Now, while cattle is hard to use, you could do some really interesting things in doubles. You can either have a Loomian use a clutch plushie and then give them a health amulet to gain health back. You can also, if a Loomian uses a shell, you can give them another shell. So, that's the thing. Cattle can be used with a lot of different combinations because it basically just uses Hoganosh's item. But with Munch Wheel, since you run no item, you basically rely on your teammate's item, and that is just not that good. Considering that the Specialization Munch Wheel and the Rev Up Munch Wheel is so much better. And honestly, Salvage just might be one of the worst abilities in the game. It's an absolutely useless ability that just makes an almost useless tech worse. That's why it's definitely in the top 2 in most useless tech Loomians. Honorable mentions on the list is actually going to be Quick Pounce Metatoad. Man, I wanted to hate on this, and I wanted to put this on the list. I just couldn't, though. Quick Pounce Metatoad still has a pretty nice niche, considering that there are a lot of boots users, and a lot of frailer Loomians which are fast, so Quick Pounce can pretty much two-shot most of those. The reason why it's honorable mention, because, you know, regular Metatoad is better, but it's fun to run the Mimi Quick Pounce set, and that's why it's an honorable mention. Another honorable mention is the Return to Sender Infernix. And while this isn't necessarily a bad set at all, honestly, it's really insane on paper. The thing is that I never was able to utilize it well. I don't know if my range defense is too high on it, or the fact that I just have some bad luck, but I never utilized the Return to Sender Infernix too well. So that's why it's an honorable mention, although it could still be very good if used correctly. The worst tech Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy is Offensive Florent. So wow, Florent being the worst Loomian in the game also has its worst tech. And while it does have some okay moves, it has a ranged attack of 65. How do you recover from that? And I know what you're thinking. You have Magnify, so you can Magnify twice, but you have 35 base speed. You're one of the slowest Loomians in the entire game. The only way you can make Florent really work is if you set up a Beta Haste, have that Loomian immediately die, and then you set up a Magnify. And then, holy crap, you only have 2 Beta Haste turns left. And even if it's without Beta Haste, almost every Loomian has a super effective move. And I know that in this scene, that it does get a sweep. Trust me, this is against a garbage team that doesn't really have that much. This is against a non-SA Terror Claw. This is against pre-evolution Loomians. This doesn't count. Florent is really bad. It doesn't even one-shot a Himber at +2, which is just really bad. Quad weak to Icicle Traps. Requires a lot just to even work. It requires so much to even work that it's not even really worth using. Like, it requires so much for it to work. And that's why it's the worst tech Loomian in the entire game. It's worse to have this on your team rather than not having it. That's how bad Florent is as a Loomian, and that's how bad this tech is. And it definitely deserves #1 onto this list. Here we go. Ranged attacking Florent, the worst tech that I have ever used in Loomian Legacy. But for every bad tech, we get some really good techs like Nimble Cephalops, Totemochi, and even Doubles Copperage. I hope you guys enjoyed this video of me talking about the worst techs in all of Loomian Legacy. And I will see y'all all later. Bye-bye!